So we shall discuss about refraction through a lens. Our topic of discussion will be restricted to spherical lenses, and so by lens or a spherical lens we shall mean a transparent refracting surface or a transparent refracting medium which is bounded by two curved surfaces. So a lens is basically a transparent surface. It is actually a transparent medium, you can say. A lens is a transparent medium which is bounded by two refracting surfaces. Two refracting surfaces which are curved. Now, these refracting surfaces are assumed to be curved because we are dealing with spherical lenses. So a lens is nothing but a transparent medium. It is bounded by two refracting surfaces which are curved or which are spherical. So it is better to say that it is bounded by two curved refracting surfaces, and they are necessarily spherical because we are dealing with spherical lenses. So when we talk of spherical lenses, a spherical lens is either a convex lens or a concave lens. So spherical lenses, these are either convex or concave. Now convex lens is a type of lens which is thicker at the middle and thinner at the edges. It is thicker at the middle and thinner at the edges. Whereas a concave lens is thinner at the middle, whereas thicker at the edges. It is thinner at the middle and it is thicker at the edges. Though we are dealing with spherical lenses, it is not necessary that both the refracting surfaces will be curved. It is quite possible that one refracting surface will be curved and another refracting surface will be plane. In those cases, the lens might be called as plano-convex lens or plano-concave lens. But for the time being, we are discussing spherical lenses on the basis of whether they are convex or concave. A convex lens is also called as converging lens. And a concave lens is also called as a diverging lens. So converging and diverging, it refers to the action of the lens. That means how the rays that are incident on the particular lens will deviate. So on that basis, the lens is called as converging or diverging lens. So we call a convex lens a converging lens and a concave lens as a diverging lens, and that will be clear through ray diagrams. So convex lens, as I have said, it is thicker at the middle and thinner at the edges. You can say that this type of lens is actually bulging out in the middle. It bulges out in the middle, and so it is thicker at the middle. Whereas the concave lens, which is thinner at the middle and is thicker at the edges, it bulges in, you can say. It bulges in, you can say. Bulges outwards, convex lens, bulges inwards, that is the concave lens. So now this concave and convex lens are also of many types. Let me draw some diagrams to represent how many convex and concave lenses are actually possible. So, if you take the different types of convex lenses, then the most familiar type is the biconvex or double convex lens. Biconvex or double convex, because both the refracting surfaces are convex in nature. So it is either called as a biconvex lens or a double convex lens. If one of the surface is convex and another surface is plane, then it is called as plano-convex lens. It is called as plano-convex lens. And if both the surfaces are curved, but one is curved outward and another is curved inward, then this type of lens is called as concave convex lens. Concave convex lens. Convex lens. Because one surface is convex and another surface is concave. One surface is bulging in and one surface is bulging out. So it is called as concave convex lens. So these are the familiar types of convex and concave lenses available. So whenever we represent concave lenses, then it will be something like this. The biconcave, both the surfaces will be concave. So it is bulging in, it is thinner at the middle and thicker at the edges. So this is a biconcave or a double concave lens. Biconcave or double concave lens. If one surface is concave and another surface is plane, then it is called as plano-concave lens. Something this type. One surface is concave and another surface is plane. So it is plano-concave lens. And if one surface is convex and another surface is concave, then something like this you will get. It will be called as convexo-concave lens. Convexo-concave lens. So these are the popular types of convex and concave lens available. So now the concave lens is a diverging lens and the convex lens is a converging lens. So that can be realized by studying how light refracts to that particular lens. So let me show that using a diagram. So if you consider the convex lens, it has both surfaces curved and suppose a ray of light is incident on one of the surface, then at the point of incidence, if you draw a normal on the tangent at that particular surface, if you draw it normal, then the light will bend towards the normal. Again, on the next surface, the light is incident. Again, if you can draw a normal here by drawing a tangent, then the ray will bend away from the normal and it will converge. So converging action of a lens or the convex lens is because whenever a ray of light is incident on it, the lens, after deviating from both the surfaces, it actually moves towards the middle of the lens, you can say. So with respect to convex lens, you can say that a ray of light, when incident on that particular lens, after refraction at both the surfaces, the ray of light bends towards the middle of the lens, or you can say it bends towards the principal axis. Whereas if you consider a concave lens, then you will see that a ray of light, when it is incident on this type of lens, it will bend away from the principal axis. So suppose you consider a ray, I am considering a parallel ray, you can consider any ray. So if you draw a tangent at this point of incidence on the curved surface, and then draw a normal. At this point of incidence, if you draw a tangent, while drawing ray diagrams, it is not necessary to do the tangent, but for demonstration I am saying that whenever we draw a perpendicular to a curved surface, we essentially draw that perpendicular on the tangent at the given point. While drawing ray diagrams, it is not needed to show the tangent. So in this case, the ray is moving from rare to denser, it will bend toward the normal. At the second point, at the second surface when it is incident, again if you draw the normal, then it will go in this manner. The normal will go in this manner, and the ray will bend away from the normal and it will move towards the edge of the lens. It will never move towards the middle of the lens. So definitely in this situation, the ray is deviating away from the principal axis, and so this is called as diverging lens. The rays move away from the principal axis or towards the edge of the lens, and in the case of convex lens, the rays after incidence and getting refracted, they will move towards the principal axis or towards the middle of the lens. So it is of convergent action. We can also realize a lens as a set of prisms. If you remember the structure of a triangular prism, then with respect to that, we can also realize the converging and the diverging action of a lens. You can assume that a convex lens or a concave lens is a collection of many prisms, and suppose we consider the convex lens as something like this. Two prisms over a rectangular glass block. So suppose a ray of light, this is the principal axis, suppose a ray of light is incident, it will deviate and then deviate towards the principal axis. If I consider another ray, it also deviates in this manner, and then it meets in this manner. So it has a convergent action, you can say. This is the convex lens and the convergent action of a convex lens. Convergent action of a convex lens. So similarly, if you consider the concave lens, it will be something like this. This is the rectangular glass block over which a prism has been mounted, you can say. I'm just showing a section of the prism. It is mounted in this manner. So suppose a ray of light is incident, then this ray of light will bend here and it will bend again, it will move away from the principal axis. Similarly, if a ray of light is incident in this manner, it will bend and then again bend and move away from the principal axis. So this is actually the divergent action of the concave lens. So whenever we are talking about convex lenses, we should remember that the convex lenses have a tendency to refract the rays towards the principal axis or bend the rays or deviate the rays towards the principal axis. Whenever we are talking of a convex lens, they have a tendency to deviate or refract the rays away from the principal axis, and hence they are called diverging lenses, whereas convex lenses are called as converging lenses. So now let us go through some technical terms associated with different lenses. First of all, the most important is the center of curvature of a lens. The center of curvature of a lens. So because we are dealing with spherical lenses and both the refracting surfaces or either one of the refracting surfaces is curved, that curved surface must have some center of curvature. Because that curved section is actually a portion of a sphere, and as a sphere has a center, the curved portion must have also its own center. So suppose this is a convex lens, a double convex lens or a biconvex lens. So there are two surfaces. This is one curved surface. It is part of a sphere. This is another curved surface which is again a part of a sphere. So if you consider the diameter of the sphere, that will be the principal axis of the particular lens. So if this is the first surface, suppose this is the first surface and its curvature is in this direction, so its center of curvature is suppose say C1, and if this is the second surface or surface 2, its center of curvature is C2. So the left surface has its center of curvature on the right, whereas the right surface has its center of curvature on the left. And those center of curvature, or that center of curvature is actually the center of the sphere from which the lens has been constructed. So this center of curvature its distance from the optical center is called as the radius of curvature. So in this case, this is one radius of curvature R1 and this is another radius of curvature R2. This point O is called as the optical center of the lens. Now, optical center is nothing but a point on the principal axis through which a ray will pass undeviated, if it is a thin lens indeed. So if we are considering thin lenses, then the optical center has a different meaning rather than if you consider lenses to be thick lenses. For the time being, if I consider thin lens, then with respect to the thin lens, the distance of the center of curvature from the optical center will be called as the radius of curvature. So R1 and R2, these are the radius of curvature of each surface, and this point O, it is called as the optical center. Optical center of the lens, and the points C1 and C2 are called as the center of curvature. C1, C2 are called as the center of curvature. So this is true for concave lens also. So with respect to the concave lens, the diagram will be something like this. So suppose this is the concave lens. It again has two refracting surfaces which are curved, and those curved sections are portions of a sphere. So this is a portion of a sphere. This is portion of another sphere. The diameter of the spheres will behave as the principal axis of the lens. So suppose this is the center of curvature of the second surface and this is the center of curvature of the first surface. So this is your surface 1 and this is your surface 2. So now, unlike the convex lens, the left surface has its center of curvature on the left and the right surface has its center of curvature on the right, and their distance from the optical center is called as the radius of curvature. C1 and C2 are the center of curvature, R1 and R2, that is OC1 and OC2, are the radius of curvature of the concave refracting surfaces. So now we have to realize what optical center is. So optical center is different for different type of lens. I mean, if the lens is a thin lens, then it is different, and if it is a thick lens, then it has been defined in a different manner. So optical center. So for thin lens, if I try to realize what optical center is. So for a thin lens, optical center is a point on the principal axis such that a ray of light passing through this point will emerge parallel to the direction of the incidence actually. And if the lens is indeed thin, then this lateral displacement is so small that it can be ignored. And therefore, for a thin lens, you can say that optical center is a point on the principal axis such that a ray of light directed towards it passes undeviated and undisplaced. So you can say for thin lens, the optical center is a point on the principal axis such that a ray of light passing through the optical center it will emerge undeviated and undisplaced. That means there is no lateral displacement of that particular ray once it emerges out of the lens. So for thin lens, suppose this is the thin lens and this is the principal axis, then suppose this is the optical center, then a ray of light directed towards the optical center will pass undeviated and undisplaced. There is no lateral displacement of this particular ray once it emerges out of the lens. And similar realization is also with respect to concave lens. The definition remains the same. The action also remains the same. So the ray of light which is passing through the optical center will emerge undeviated and undisplaced. Whereas if you define for a thick lens, the ray of light after emerging out of the lens will get displaced, and there is a prominent lateral displacement in that. So let us draw the diagram. Now for thick lens, if I say, for a thick lens, it is a point on the principal axis such that a ray of light passing through the optical center emerges parallel to the direction of incidence. You can say it emerges parallel to the direction of incidence. The direction of incidence. So you can demonstrate that using a ray diagram. So if I consider a thick lens, then suppose this is the optical center on the principal axis, and a ray of light after passing to the optical center will emerge parallel to the direction of incidence. This is what will happen. Suppose this is the incident ray, it will refract at the first surface, it will pass through the optical center, and when it emerges, it will emerge parallel to the direction of incidence. So suppose this point is PS, this point is suppose QT, then TQ will be parallel to TS. So the ray of light emerges parallel to the direction of incidence, and there is a prominent lateral displacement you can say. So this is your lateral displacement. This perpendicular is your lateral displacement. That's why it emerges parallel to the direction of incidence. A similar diagram can be drawn for a concave lens also. If the concave lens is indeed thick, then the ray of light after refraction passes through the optical center in such a manner that the emergent ray will remain parallel to the incident ray. But in this chapter we will be dealing with thin lenses. So all our definitions, derivations and ray diagrams will be restricted to the thin lenses only. But optical center should be defined differently for thin lens and thick lens. So now let us try to understand what is the principal focus and the focal points. Principal focus. So suppose with respect to convex lens. Suppose we have a point on the principal axis such that a ray of light that originates from the principal axis after refraction at the lens surface becomes parallel to the principal axis. Then that point will be called as the first principal focus. I am not writing the definition, you can refer to your textbooks, but please, if you try to understand this, there exists a point on the principal axis such that a ray of light originating from that point after refraction at the lens becomes parallel to the principal axis, then that point is called as the first principal focus. First principal focus. We will be considering thin lens, so we shall not show the deviation at both the surface of the lens. We shall consider an average diagram. Somewhere from the middle of the lens we will show one set of refraction. Because we are taking thin lenses, we will not show refraction at both the surfaces. We will show refraction from some middle portion of the lens. So this is the median line, you can say, that passes through the optical center. And with respect to that, we will show refraction. That will be more convenient. So this ray that originates from the first principal focus after refraction at the surface of the convex lens will become parallel to the principal axis. And this point will be called as the first principal focus. So if I take another ray, this ray after refraction becomes parallel to the principal axis. So this is your first principal focus. On the other hand, a ray of light, if it is parallel to the convex lens, suppose this is the principal axis, a ray of light is parallel to the principal axis. After refraction, it converges to a point on the principal axis. So, a ray of light parallel to the principal axis after refraction at the principal axis, after refraction at the lens surface becomes incident at some point on the principal axis, then it is called as the second principal focus. If I take another parallel ray below the principal axis, the same will happen. After refraction at the lens surface, it will meet at a point on the principal axis, and this point is called as the second principal focus. The distance of the first principal focus from the optical center, that is OF1, is called as the first principal focal length. first principal focal length, and the distance of the second principal focus from the optical center will be called as the second principal focal length. But whenever we just say focus or focal length, we mean the second principal focus and the second principal focal length. I repeat again, if we just say focus of a lens or focal length of a lens, we just refer to the second principal focus or the second principal focal length of a lens. So now both these points can be defined for a concave lens also. So let us take a concave lens and try to realize how the second principal focus and the first principal focus will be present on the principal axis. So now, with respect to the concave lens, if you observe that a set of rays incident on the lens after refraction becomes parallel to the principal axis. So suppose there is one point on the principal axis such that a ray of light directed towards this point. If there is a ray of light that is directed towards this point, after refraction it becomes parallel to the principal axis. Then that point is called as the first principal focus. First principal focus. So I again repeat, if there exists a point on the principal axis such that a ray of light which has been directed towards that point, after refraction it becomes parallel to the principal axis, then that point is called as the first principal focus. So incident rays of light, you can say, appearing to meet at it after refraction becomes parallel to the principal axis. So if I consider another ray also that actually appear to meet at that point after refraction becomes parallel to the principal axis. So that will be the first principal focus, and its distance from the optical center will be called as the first principal focal length. So here OF1 is the first principal focal length. So now if you consider a set of rays which are parallel to the principal axis, after refraction they appear to diverge from a point. So suppose this is a ray parallel to the principal axis, then after refraction it appears to diverge from a point. If I produce this ray backward, it appears that this ray is moving away from this particular point F2. Then F2 is called as the second principal focus. So we can define the second principal focus in this manner. A set of rays parallel to the principal axis after refraction from the concave lens appear to diverge from a point, and that point is called as the second principal focus. Suppose if I take another ray, it will also appear to diverge from this point after refraction. So it will appear to diverge from this point. So you can say this also expresses the diverging action of the lens. With respect to the convex lens, we observe that a parallel beam of ray after refraction converges to a point, and that was called as the second principal focus. So it represented the converging action of the lens. However, in case of the concave lens, we observe that a set of rays parallel to the principal axis, they appear to diverge from a point, and that is called as the second principal focus. So this is your second principal focus, and that describes the diverging action of the lens. And the distance from the optical center to this particular point F2 is called as the second principal focal length. Again I repeat, if you just say focus of a lens or focal length of a lens, it simply means the second principal focus or the second principal focal length of the lens. So if a lens is equiconvex or equiconcave, then both the focal lengths are equal. Which means that if the refracting surfaces of both the convex or the concave lens are such that their radius of curvature is same, then their focal length will also have the same value. So this OF1 is equal to OF2 if for any convex or concave lens. If it happens, then the particular lens is called as equiconcave or equiconvex. It is not necessarily equal, but if it happens, it is called as equiconcave or equiconvex lens. And the radius of curvature is twice the focal length. So in case of both the lenses, OC1, that was denoted as the center of curvature, OC1 is R1 and OC2 was R2. And generally, suppose this OF1 is called as F1 and OF2 is called as F2, then generally what we get is the radius of curvature is twice the focal length. So now, what happens if a ray of light is not parallel to the principal axis, but the rays of light are parallel to themselves? So let us see that situation. Suppose we take the example of a convex lens. Suppose there are many rays which are parallel to themselves, but they are not parallel to the principal axis. After refraction, they will also meet at a point, and that point will lie on a plane which is called as the focal plane. So suppose I am drawing this plane. This is a plane perpendicular to the principal axis, and suppose this is called as the focal plane. Let me consider some rays which are parallel to each other but not parallel to the principal axis. So these rays, after refraction, they will meet at some point on the principal axis. So suppose this meets here. So they will all meet at some point on the focal plane. They will meet at some point P on the focal plane, and this focal plane is a plane that is perpendicular to the principal axis and it passes through the focus. So in this case, we have shown a set of parallel rays. They converge to some point on the focal plane, and that focal plane passes to the second principal focus. Similarly, if this type of parallel beam of light is incident obliquely on the concave lens, it will appear to divert from a point on the focal plane. So that also we can show with the local diagram. So the conclusion is, if a set of rays mutually parallel to themselves but not parallel to the principal axis, after refraction meet at a point on the focal plane in the case of a convex lens, whereas in the case of a concave lens, they diverge away from a point on the focal plane. So suppose this is the focal plane, this is the focal plane which passes to the second principal focus, and if we have a set of rays which are parallel to themselves, but not parallel to the principal axis. They are parallel to themselves but not parallel to the principal axis. This ray passes through the optical center, it will go undeviated. So let me take another ray and they will diverge away from the principal axis. They will diverge away from a point on the second principal focal. They will diverge away. So they will diverge away from a point on the focal plane. Suppose diverge from the point P. So this is what will happen if the ray of light are not parallel to the principal axis but they are parallel to themselves. So we can say that the general overview of a convex and a concave lens is almost complete. We will come across different ray diagrams associated with convex and concave lens. So if we try to distinguish between a convex and a concave lens, we can say that a convex lens bulges out in the middle, it is thicker at the middle and thinner at the edges, whereas a concave lens bulges inwards towards the middle, it is thin, and towards the edge it is thick. A convex lens has a converging action, it tries to converge the rays towards the principal axis, whereas a concave lens is a divergent action, it tries to diverge the rays away from the principal axis. Now, in the case of a concave lens, the focus is virtual, whereas in the case of a convex lens, the focus is definitely real. Now, what do I mean by real and virtual? If you again observe the ray diagram of a convex or a concave lens, so suppose this is a convex lens, a ray of light is incident and it meets at a point on the principal axis. Similar diagram for a convex lens will be something like this. A ray of light parallel will appear to diverge from a point. So you see that this focus and this focus is quite different. Now here the rays are actually meeting at the focus and here the rays are appearing to diverge from the focus. They are appearing to diverge from the focus. So if the focus is on the same side as that of the incident ray, then it is called as virtual focus. Whereas in this case, the focus is not on the side of the incident ray, and so this focus is a real focus. So you can say that the focus of a convex lens is real, whereas the focus of a concave lens is virtual. We are deliberately producing the rays backwards, the refracted rays backwards, so that they meet at a point. Here they actually meet at a point, here we are deliberately producing it backward to meet at a point. So this focus is virtual, whereas the focus of the convex lens is real. That is also same for the first principal focus. So what happens is, if you have the focus in the side of the incident ray, then it is virtual. If you have the focus on the other side of the incident ray, then it is real. So now we will look at different ray diagrams associated with different positions of the object on the principal axis. So now we will study about how to draw specific ray diagrams and understand the position of the image with respect to the position of the object in case of convex and concave lenses. So before we study the exact ray diagrams, we consider certain rays which might be called as the principal rays for constructing different ray diagrams. So formation of image by a lens is studied with the help of specific set of rays. So I have drawn some diagrams. So each of these diagrams represent what rays should be actually taken in order to draw the ray diagrams appropriately. So the first ray in either convex or concave lens is a ray that passes through the optical center. When a ray passes through the optical center in case of a thin lens, it remains undeviated, and it is true for both convex as well as concave lens. So a ray passing through the optical center might be considered as one ray while drawing the actual ray diagrams, which passes through the optical center undeviated. Another ray that can be taken is a ray that is parallel to the principal axis. In case of a convex lens, the ray parallel to the principal axis after refraction passes to the second principal focus. Similarly, in the case of a concave lens, a ray parallel to the principal axis will appear to diverge from the second principal focus. That means the ray is produced backward and it appears that it has originated from the second principal focus. So we say that a ray parallel to the principal axis after refraction from the concave lens appears to diverge from the second principal focus. This might be taken as the second principal ray for drawing ray diagrams. The third ray that we usually take is a ray passing through the first principal focus. So in case of a convex lens, if you consider a ray passing through the first principal focus, after refraction it will become parallel to the principal axis. Whereas in case of a concave lens, if you take a ray which is directed towards the first principal focus, then after refraction that ray becomes parallel to the principal axis. So these are the three types of rays, or you can call them as principal rays for constructing ray diagrams. So we now move on to draw the ray diagrams in case of both convex lens and concave lens. So now we consider image formation by a convex lens, and the first case is when the object is at infinity. Now here infinity means the object is very far away from the convex lens, and suppose there is an object AB which is placed very far away from the convex lens and which is actually a distant object, so we call it is at infinity. So as you know that from a very large distance the rays that are incident are almost parallel to each other. So we have considered two parallel rays, one passing through the optical center, and rays passing through the optical center will definitely remain undeviated, and a ray passing through the first principal focus after refraction becomes parallel to the principal axis. So with the help of these two rays, we can observe that the image is formed at the focus. So when the object is at infinity, the image is formed at focus. Image is formed at focus on the other side as that of the object, on the other side of the lens. So it is a real image, and the image is real. It is inverted. Real images are always inverted, and it is highly diminished. It is very much diminished. Now this type of image formation in the case of a convex lens is used either as a camera lens or as a burning glass, you can say. As a camera lens or as a burning glass. So with respect to the camera lens, if the object lies very far away from the lens and the image is formed at the camera film, which is at the second focus, or you can say the second focal plane, but while you are using a burning glass, the rays from the sun very far away, the sun is definitely very far away, so we say that the ray is coming from infinity. They are brought to focus on a piece of paper which is kept on the second focal plane of the lens. Due to sufficient heat, definitely from the sun rays, the paper will burn. That is the application of a burning lens. So a burning lens is a convex lens which is kept, where the object to be burned, the paper or a dry leaf, whatever it is kept on the second principal focal plane of the lens, and the rays from the sun are focused, and the heat from the sun rays actually burn the glass. In the case of a camera lens, the image, if it is very far away, the image is formed at the camera film, which is at the second focal plane of the camera lens. So let us now move on to the second application where the object is beyond 2f1. Actually, in the case of a convex lens or a concave lens, the focus are designated as f1 and f2, and 2f1 and 2f2 is actually the position of the center of curvature. As we know that the radius of curvature is twice the focal length, so the center of curvature is denoted as 2f2 and 2f1 on either side of the lens. So with respect to the first surface, this is the center of curvature 2f2 of the first surface, and with respect to the second surface, second refracting surface, 2f1 is the center of curvature. Because the focal length is half of the radius of curvature, so we denote it as 2f1 and 2f2. So now, if the object is beyond 2f1, that means it is beyond the center of curvature on one side of the lens, then again we consider two sets of rays, one ray parallel to the principal axis. After refraction it will pass through the focus or the second principal focus, and a ray passing to the optical center will remain undeviated. These two rays meet at a position such that we obtain the image between f2 and 2f2. So the image is between f2 and 2f2, or between the second principal focus and the center of curvature on the other side of the lens. As such, it is a real image. The image is real. Real images are always inverted, and the image is diminished but not highly diminished. The image is quite diminished. The image is diminished. And this type of image formation by the convex lens is also used in case of a camera where the object is which is not very far actually, unlike the previous case. If the object is not very far away and it is to be photographed, then this type of image formation can be realized in the case of a camera lens. So now we can move on to take some further examples in the case of a convex lens. So now we consider if the object is at twice f1, that means the object is at the center of curvature on one side of the lens, then we consider again the principal rays. One of the rays is parallel to the principal axis. The ray after refraction will pass to the second principal focus. Another ray which is passing to the optical center will pass undeviated, and then these two rays will meet at the at the center of curvature of the lens on the other side, that means at 2f. So if the object is placed at 2f1, we will find or we will get an image at 2f2, and the image is same size as that of the object. Though in the diagram it does not appear to be of the same size, but if you use proper scale to draw the diagrams, then you will obviously obtain an image which is same size as that of the object. So in that case you have to take the distances in a proper manner using a scale. That means OF2 must be equal to the distance between f2 and 2f2, and in this direction OF1 must be equal to the distance between f1 and 2f1. So if everything is drawn to scale, and using scale if you can draw the straight lines etc., then we will definitely get a proper image of the same size as that of the object at 2f2. So the image is at 2f2, image is formed at 2f2, the image is real, and as I have already said, real images are always inverted, and in this case the image is same size as that of the object. Same size as that of the object. So the image is formed at 2f2, it is real, it is inverted, and it is same size as that of the object. The next application is if the object is placed between f1 and 2f1. If the object is placed between f1 and 2f1 on the one side of the lens, then you will get an image which is beyond 2f2. and in this case this image will be a bit magnified. It will be real, it will be inverted, and it will be a bit magnified. So again we have taken two sets of rays, a ray parallel to the principal axis after refraction passes to the second principal focus or F2, a ray passing through the optical center O goes undeviated, and then these two rays meet so that we can find the position of the image A dash B dash of the object AB beyond 2F2. So the image is formed beyond 2F2 in this case. Image is formed beyond 2F2 and the image is real, it is inverted and it is magnified. It is slightly magnified, but it is magnified. Now this type of image formation is used in camera and slide projectors, and the magnified image is obtained on the screen placed at a certain distance from the lens. So application, you can say it is used in camera and slide projectors. Camera and slide projectors, where the magnified image is obtained on a screen. In the case of a slide projector, the slide is generally placed between just beyond the focus in the upside down position, so that we can obtain a erect image on the screen. Because in this case we already obtain a inverted image, so the slide should be placed just beyond the focus in an upside down manner, so that we receive an erect image on the screen. We can take further examples. So now we consider two more applications associated with image formation by a convex lens. The fifth case is when the object is at f1. If the object is at the focus, then the image will be formed at infinity. It will be formed very far away from the lens, and that is what we call as infinity. So an object AB is placed at f1. We consider two sets of rays, a ray parallel to the principal axis after refraction passes to the second principal focus, and a ray which is along the optical center will pass through the optical center undeviated. And these two rays are almost parallel, and as you know that parallel rays do not meet, but we can assume that they meet after a very large distance, and possibly they meet at infinity, that means at a very large distance away from the lens. So the image is formed at infinity. You can say image is formed at infinity, that means very far away from the lens. The image is obviously real because it is formed on the other side of the lens. The image is real, and real means it is always inverted and it is magnified. And with respect to the previous case, here you can say that it is highly magnified. So this will be the characteristics of the image formed when the object is placed at f1. Now this type of application is specifically used in a collimator. You can say that it is used in a collimator in which we try to produce a parallel beam of rays by placing the source of light at the focus of the convex lens. So collimator is used to produce a parallel beam of light by placing the source of light at the focus of the convex lens. The next ray diagram is if the object is placed between the lens and the focus. That means it is placed between the optical center and the first principal focus. That is, with respect to the diagram, we can say that between of the optical center O and the first principal focus F1. So between the optical center and the focus, an object AB has been placed. We again consider two sets of rays, A ray parallel to the principal axis after refraction passes to the second principal focus, and a ray passing through the optical center will go undeviated. Now these two rays do not meet, so they are produced backwards and they meet behind the object. They meet somewhere behind the object and we get a magnified image, an erect magnified image, a virtual image, an erect image and a magnified image. Now as the image is formed behind the object, that is on the same side of the lens, we can say that the image is virtual. You can say that image is formed as same size as that of the object, same side, sorry. Image is formed on the same side as that of the object. And so its characteristics is it is virtual. Virtual images are always erect or upright, and it is magnified. And this type of application is typically used in the case of a simple microscope. So these are the prominent application areas of a convex lens and the associated ray diagrams. A simple microscope or a reading lens you can also say, or a magnifying glass you can also say. So it produces a magnified virtual image of an object which is formed and is distinguished seen by the eye, because this eye lens actually converges the ray to form a real image on the retina. So simple microscope, reading glass, magnifying glass, all are the applications of this figure. Now we look at ray diagram of concave lens. So now with respect to a concave lens, we have two ray diagrams. The first situation is when the object is placed at infinity. So when the object is very far away from the lens itself, and as the object is at infinity or very far away, the rays coming from the object are assumed to be parallel. A ray is directed towards the first principal focus. A ray is directed towards the first principal focus. And after refraction, it becomes parallel to the principal axis, and a ray passes through the optical center and it passes undeviated. So if these rays are produced backward, you will see that the image is formed at the second principal focus. So for a distant object, if the object is at infinity, the image is formed at the second principal focus. The image is virtual, it is erect and it is diminished. Concave lens always forms a diminished image because the image is in the same side as that of the object, it is virtual. The image is formed at the second principal focus, that is f2. The image is obviously virtual. Virtual images are always upright or erect, and it is diminished. You can say it is highly diminished also, because it is too much diminished. So it is better to say it is highly diminished. And in the next case, if the object is between infinity and the optical center, the object is somewhere between infinity and the optical center of the concave lens. So suppose the object I have placed between 2 f2, and we take two rays for drawing the ray diagram. A ray parallel to the principal axis, after refraction will appear to diverge from the second principal focus. It is parallel to the principal axis, it appears to diverge. That means this ray which is produced backward, it appears to diverge from the second principal focus. And the ray passing to the optical center will remain undeviated. These two rays, they meet some point between optical center and the second principal focus. So the image that we get is a diminished image. Now in this situation, wherever the object is actually, if the object is between infinity and optical center, wherever the object is, I can say that irrespective of the position of the object, the image formed by a concave lens is virtual, upright and diminished, and it is always formed between the second principal focus and the optical center of the lens. So it doesn't matter whether it is beyond f2 or between 2f2 and f2 or at 2f2, the image is always formed between the optical center and the second principal focus. It is virtual, it is erect and it is diminished. So in this case you can say image is formed between second principal focus f2 and the optical center O of the lens. The characteristics of the image are such that it is virtual, it is erect or upright, and it is diminished. So with respect to a convex lens that I have already discussed, you can see or conclude from all the ray diagrams that if the object comes closer to the lens, the image moves farther away from the lens. So when the object is very far from the convex lens, the image is formed at the focus. As the object is gradually moved toward the lens, the image moves away from the focus of the lens. It becomes real, it is inverted and diminished, and if it is at 2f, then the image is also at 2f. It is same size as that of the object. If the object is between 2f and f, then onwards you see that the image gets magnified and the image goes beyond 2f and so on. Ultimately, a situation arises where the object, if it is between the focus and the optical center, then only we obtain a virtual, erect and magnified image in the case of a convex lens. In all other cases we got real images. So what we conclude is that as the object moves closer to the lens, the image moves farther away from the lens. But in the case of a concave lens, no matter where the object is, if the object is at 2f2, if the object is between 2f2 and f2, if the object is beyond 2f2, if the object is between the optical center and the focus, no matter where the object is, the image is always formed between the optical center and the second principal focus. The image is always virtual, erect and diminished. Concave lenses never form a real image or magnified image. They always form virtual and diminished images. So this is the conclusion regarding image formation by convex lens and concave lens.